Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I am Al Hunt. This week, our guest is the former Secretary of Defense, the former Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, the former White House Chief of Staff, and Director of the Office of Management and Budget, the great Leon Panetta. Now remember, we love taking your questions, so write to politicswarroom@gmail.com for next week's show. Now we're going to get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can get also text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at politicon.com. So tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And please check out the link to our sponsor, Quince, in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting these sponsors because when you do, it helps make this podcast happen. James, there are humongous stories this week. Trump and Hegseth summoning top American flag officers from around the world to Quantico. In an unprecedented act, the Justice Department, under orders from the president, indicts the former FBI director, and now the government is shut down. Leon Panetta is a former defense secretary and CIA director, a former White House budget director and House Budget Committee chair, and worked at the Justice Department as well as White House chief of staff. There is no one as qualified to talk about all this as Leon Panetta. Leon, we are honored to have you here. Let me start with that extraordinary meeting earlier this week. I thought the Trump-Hegseth summoning 800 top military officers from around the globe to hear a rambling, partisan, offensive, 70-minute diatribe from the president was an insult to the flag officers and an embarrassment for the country. Tell me what I'm missing.
Well, Al, first of all, good to be with you and James, as always. I can imagine that you're talking about a room full of, about 800 of the best military commanders, admirals and generals, who have, come from around the world, and all have been tested in battle. They know how to fight. They don't have to be told how to fight. They've got battle ribbons. They've got combat badges. And I'm sure they traveled thousands of miles because they wanted to hear about our national defense. We live in a dangerous world. We're confronting Russia and China, North Korea, Iran, terrorists. They wanted to hear what is our national defense approach to protecting our country. And instead, as you said, what they heard were a bunch of old political talking points on culture wars, on threats from Brooklyn to Michigan Avenue, and how our troops can somehow be tested in our cities. They were told that we have to throw away the rules of engagement. They were told that somehow we need a male standard in order to judge whether or not men and women are entitled to be in combat. It was, look, as a former president's chief of staff, and knowing that the president is the commander in chief, this was a real missed opportunity to do the right thing in dealing with a bunch of respected and battle-tested commanders. They just blew it, frankly. They blew it.
Let me pick up on one or two things. Trump said that the military is trained to go into American cities. You were defense secretary. Is that what those men and women officers train for?
Look, the most important thing about our military is that we have tried and made clear that they should not be politicized, that their main job is to fight our foreign adversaries that threaten our country. That's what it's about. It's not about law enforcement. It's not about being cops in the street. We have laws that make clear that our military is there to protect us from foreign enemies. And that's what it's about. And so to suddenly talk about our primary mission being deployed into the cities of this country and doing basically law enforcement is to really, in many ways, undermine the real purpose of our military. Look, we have the strongest military on the face of the earth. We've got the best fighting men and women on the face of the earth. And the purpose of that is to defend us and protect our national security. It's not to deploy these people to the cities in this country. And it's not to certainly have them train in the cities of this country. They need training, and they get training on how to conduct wars, how to deal with drones, how to deal with technology, how to deal with some of the weapon systems that we're seeing today. That's what they need to be trained on, not trained on the streets of America. That is just undermining the real purpose of having a military.
Well, in that context, the administration said, Hegseth said, that they're reshaping priorities to focus more on the homeland threats and downplaying America's role in places like Africa and Europe. What are the consequences of that, Leon?
Well, the consequences is that we're going to be a weaker country as a result. Because, the real strength of our country is that we've been a world leader. And that goes back to World War II for 80 years. And by the way, whether you were a Republican president or a Democratic president, they may have had their differences on policies, but the reality is that when it came to national defense, they all took the same role of world leadership. Recognized that the United States had to be a world leader, recognized that the United States had to build alliances, recognized that the United States had to have the strongest military in the world. And they were willing to stand up to dictators and to tyrants. Republicans and Democrats for 80 years all followed pretty much those same principles. And now we're being told that the main threat is on the streets of America. Look, there's no question we have threats in this country. There's no question we have to deal with crime. But we have ways to deal with crime. It's called police. It's called law enforcement. It's called the FBI. Those are the ways we deal with enforcing the law here in this country. But when it comes to threats abroad, that's a role for the United States military. And that's why having 800 military commanders come to a meeting from across the world and then not talk about what they're concerned about, what they're out there fighting against, was just, irresponsible leadership.
Yeah, I one more, and then I'm going to turn it over to James. Defense Secretary Hegseth railed against woke military personnel and policies. By his standards, I suspect he would have called the appointment of Colin Powell woke. But he suggested women really aren't up to being a fighting force. He did say you have to be fit, not fat. Maybe he ought to give a lecture to his commander-in-chief. But in any event, you know more about the military than almost anyone. Is it too woke, and are women unfit for combat?
It really concerns me that a Secretary of Defense does not even begin to understand why we have the strongest military in the world. We have the strongest military in the world because we allow people to serve in the military, men and women and others who want to serve in the United States of America. And I have to tell you, I've looked into the eyes of our men and women in uniform. They're prepared to fight and die for our country. That's what our military is all about. And I've seen women be able to perform in combat. They've died in combat. They're out there now. 200,000 women are part of our military. And they're watching each other's back and they're serving together. My grandson just came back from 5 years in the Navy. He was working with women every day who were serving on the same carrier. So they're doing the job. They're protecting our country. And they respond to the mission. Look, when the president wants to go into Iran, our military comes together and does the mission and did it effectively. When he wants them to do other things, they do it effectively. So I don't know what the hell they're talking about. The fact is, we have the very best military on the face of the earth. What they ought to be doing is trying to make sure that we maintain that strength in the future. And they said nothing about that.
I'm going to turn it over to James. Just want to quick. Has Hegseth talked to you since he's been defense secretary?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, that's what I thought. James.
So, man, I want to go back to another part of your experience in your life. There's so many, but it's a little more mundane, but I think it's really important. As I recall, you were the chairman of the House Budget Committee at one time, and you were the OMB director. So your fiscal chops is probably more than anybody. Should we worry about $40 trillion in debt, and that it's just not going to stop? It's just going to keep getting worse. I mean, how does this? I'm hardly a deficit scold, but doesn't this strike you as getting a little bit out of hand?
Well, James, you and I have been through it going back to the Clinton administration, and the reality was, I've often said that I've seen Washington at its best and I've seen Washington at its worst. The good news is I've seen Washington work. I've seen Republicans and Democrats willing to work together to try to deal with the problems facing this country. And when I was chairman of the Budget Committee, we worked with Republicans. And when I was in the Clinton administration, we worked together on issues. And it was critical at that time. We were worried about deficits. I think that we're going to run somewhere around $400 to $600 billion. Now we've got deficits that are approaching almost $2 trillion and a national debt that is somewhere around, I think the last number I saw is close to $40 trillion. $40 trillion national debt. And it's undermining our economy. It's undermining our strength. But the real problem is that neither party wants to deal with the issues that you have to deal with. I mean, as James knows, we came up with $500 billion in deficit reduction in the Clinton administration. We came up with $500 billion in deficit reduction in the Bush administration. Because of that, we were able to balance the federal budget, and not only balance it, but have a surplus. Today, neither party wants to deal with the spending issues, with raising revenues, with the decisions that you have to make if you want to be fiscally responsible. And so both parties have walked away from discipline. We're now in a shutdown. They can't talk to each other. They can't work together. They are failing our democracy. I tell the kids here at the Panetta Institute that in a democracy, we govern either by leadership or crisis. If leadership is there and willing to make tough decisions and work together, you can avoid crisis. But if that leadership isn't there, we'll govern by crisis. And the problem today is the United States of America is largely being governed by crisis.
So let's go ahead to 2028, all right? And it's early, but what kind of qualities are you hoping that we see in the Democratic nominee? I think we know pretty much where the Republican code is going, but where the Democratic Party goes is not a settled question. And so just talk about some of the qualities that you'll be looking for in potential presidential candidates.
James, I think the problem we've had is that recent presidents have not really confronted the issue of the divisions in this country. Joe Biden talked about unifying the country. He really didn't do it. And Trump certainly hasn't done it. This country is badly divided. It's badly divided. But deep down, I don't care whether you're from a red state or a blue state. There are basic values that all Americans have. They want to raise their family. They want to educate their kids. They want to deal with the healthcare problems in their family. They want to have a house. They want to have a job. Those are the basic values of all Americans. We need a candidate who can speak to those basic values and who cares about bringing this country together, whether you're in a red state or a blue state. If this is all about political base, if it's all about playing to the old base that we've had, then we'll continue to be divided. We need somebody that's going to stand up and really try to unify this country and speaks to the values that we care about. Look, to put it very simply, we probably need a Bill Clinton type who kind of understands what this country's all about, understands what people need, and can speak to their issues in a way that they understand. That's the kind of leader we need.
So, I just have one question. What makes you think the country wants to be unified? I mean, it seems to me maybe, we assume that everybody wants unity, everybody wants to pull together, everybody wants to be part of the team. But I'm not, I mean, in order to unify people, they got to want it. They got to be predisposed to do it. I hope you're right, but I'm afraid.
I don't disagree with you, James, because this is a power game right now. It's a power game between two parties who are, we've got a small margin of difference in the Congress. They're both fighting for power. It's been about fighting for power for the last few years. They haven't really tried to focus on, the major issues confronting this country. Trump certainly hasn't done it. I don't think the Democrats have done a good job trying to address the problems in this country and come up with a vision about where we need to go as a country. And so it's a hell of a lot easier to kind of be divided. It's a hell of a lot easier to just have a safe seat, whether it's Democrat or Republican, and just sit on it and not take any chances, not take any risks. Just basically protect your seat. And that's what politics is about these days. And frankly, we need desperately to have leadership that's willing to take risks. And I'll tell you why. Because, I know what's going on in Washington. It's horrible what's going on in Washington. Washington's totally dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional. They can't sit down, and decide what the hell they're going to do for lunch, much less deal with the problems of the country. And so it's very divided. And yet, I got to tell you something. When you go out into the country, and I've been out in the country in red states and blue states, and I go to communities, those communities still have the concern about how do they work together to deal with the problems that are facing their community. It's not about Democrat or Republican. It's about trying to solve problems. And that's where the strength of this country is. It's not in Washington. It's in the spirit and the kind of caring that de Tocqueville talked about when he came to this country. He said, the one thing I saw in American communities is that they cared for one another and they were willing to work together. Well, that's still real. And that's still what people care about. And what we need are leaders who speak to that strength, not speak to further dividing this country.
So have you taken a position on the California proposition about gerrymandering yet?
I haven't really, but, I'm not sure we have any other choice but to do what has to be done out here. If Texas is going to redistrict in a way that favors Republicans and the president is pushing them to do it, and Missouri's going to do that, I don't know that we can just sit on our hands and do nothing. So, I understand that you got to fight back.
Well, it's 3-0 in this program. We have exactly the same position you did. In a vacuum, I wouldn't be for it, but we don't live in a vacuum.
That's it. Yeah.
Albert?
Yeah, let me go to the short. We're in a shutdown right now. I mean, you've lived through shutdowns. They used to be short when you were in Congress. Then Gingrich made them big. And right now, the danger, some people say for the Democrats, if this goes on for a while, and it looks like it may, is that it'll enable Trump and as budget director to slash further programs and people even more than they're doing. Is that a danger?
It's a hell of a danger because you've got an administration that doesn't abide by the rule of law. It doesn't abide by the rules that used to guide spending in this country. They don't believe in the power of the purse. They don't believe Congress has a role. And very frankly, Congress doesn't have a role. They're not playing any role that's meaningful with regards to this. So they basically have a free hand to do any damn thing they want. And they're going to take advantage of this and basically use it to break all of the rules. They'll fire people. They'll shut down programs. They'll do what Doge did at the beginning of this administration. They'll basically operate on that basis, and we'll pay a hell of a price for that. So, I understand, that the Democrats feel like they've got to hang tough. But you have to know when to hang tough, and you have to know what you want as the price. And I just get the sense that they kind of threw healthcare out there. And look, healthcare is a great issue. I think Democrats need to support healthcare. But they also need to have, what is the deal here? They're not in charge. The Republicans are in charge. What kind of deal can they make in order to try to make this happen? I mean, those were the days when I was there. That's what Tom Foley's, that's what Tip O'Neill's, that's what George Mitchell's, that's what Bob Dole did. Everybody sat down and figured out, okay, how do we cut a deal here and try to keep the government running? That process doesn't take place now. And so you've got people who are in the trenches. They're throwing grenades at one another, and nobody's willing to get out of their trench into no man's land and try to see if they can cut some kind of deal. And we're going to pay the price for it. The American people are going to pay the price for it. Look, I think we've got a shaky economy right now as a result of tariffs, as a result of inflation, as a result of trade problems, as a result, frankly, of people not feeling confident about where our economy is going. Everybody is nervous about where it's going. We're now in a shutdown. It's going to cost us. And I think it's going to undermine our economy even more. We're playing with fire right now. And I think there's a real possibility we could have an economic crisis in this country within the next few months.
And you mentioned the rule of law a moment ago. The Justice Department indicted the former FBI director, James Comey, at the instruction of President Trump. The acting U.S. attorney there said there's no basis for it. He was fired. They brought in a Trump lackey with no experience. Is this reminiscent or worse than the Watergate crises that you lived through?
I think it's worse because, I went through Watergate, but even at that time, although the president did what he did, I think the reality is that there was at least some respect for the rule of law. And there was a recognition that, presidents, no matter what party you come from, have some basic values that they stand by. That's all out the window right now. That's all out the window. I don't know that anybody is willing to stand by the rule of law, stand by the Constitution. Now, the courts are trying to do what they can. They'll continue to do it. God bless them that there are judges out there who are strong enough to make the right decisions. That's probably the one institution in our democracy that's still working. But as we know, it takes time, and a lot of damage can occur in the meantime. And so, when you have a president who basically is, he's not enforcing the law, he's abusing the law in order to go after political enemies. I mean, that is something that I don't think we've ever seen, at least in my lifetime, in terms of the role of the Justice Department.
Leon, I used to think that only crazy conspiracy nuts talked about a police state. But when you go picking up on some of what you just said, sending troops into cities, attacking perceived enemies, it really doesn't seem as crazy to worry that America is turning into a police state.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of Americans are concerned because, we've all believed deeply in the Constitution. I mean, people that are elected, including Trump, swear an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And yet they're not abiding by that Constitution. And they're not abiding by the rule of law. And very frankly, the rule of law is critical to our democracy. The only way we survive as a democracy, the only way we're able to have a voice and to be able to be out there and work together is because we have a democracy, we have a constitution that respects our right of free speech and our right of participation. And when we start to weaken those institutions, and when you have somebody who's prepared to take advantage of that as president of the United States, then you're damn rights we have to worry. We have to worry. And it's a time when we have to stand up. And I still believe that most Americans in this country really believe in the United States of America and love our country for what it is and love our Constitution and do abide by the rule of law. And I think most Americans are concerned about what they see happening in Washington. And what we need to do is to now become a voice. We need to have voices out there. We need to have leaders out there that are willing to say, this is not what America's about. This is not what America's about. It's not the America that we fought for. It's not the America that our founding fathers built for the future. It's not the America that we fought in the Civil War and in world wars. It's an America that's changing our fundamental values. People have got to have the guts now to stand up and say that. And instead, everybody's running for cover. And that, I think, is what worries me more than anything. Is I ask myself, where in the hell are the leaders who used to stand up and say, this is not going to happen on my watch?
James.
Leon, I obviously was out at your place, was in Monterey County, and you talked about all the challenges that the economy faces, and it's pretty daunting. But one I'd like you to speak to, because it's an issue that you live with, all of your life and still do, and that's the issue of immigration. And just you living in a place that anybody that's been in that part of the world knows that immigration it plays an essential part in the economy, but not just there, all over the country. Tell us about your experience with immigration and how you think what the best way to kind of handle this is going forward.
Well, as you know, James, I'm the son of Italian immigrants. My parents came to this country like millions of others.
The story?
But I'm a believer that we are the land of immigrants, and that's what the Statue of Liberty is all about. I mean, I found it a little interesting that yesterday at that meeting, they're talking about not pushing diversity, and you look out at that audience, and it is diversity, because America is a diverse country. It's a cross section of America. We are diverse, and it's our strength. It's not our weakness. It's our strength. And, I understand the concern about the border. I think Biden failed to deal with controlling the border and deal with immigration. But I don't think we should walk away from what is one of the core strengths of America, which is that we have opened up our doors to people from across the world to come here and be able to succeed at the American dream. I'm I'm the son of Italian immigrants. I live the American dream. That's what people want, is to be able to have a piece of the American dream. And I think that, yeah, sure, we need to be strong on the border, but you know what? We also need to have a process for dealing with people that want to come to this country. We still need comprehensive immigration reform. And for the life of me, I don't know why the Democrats haven't stood up and said, we need comprehensive immigration reform. It's not just about the border. It's about how do we treat people? How do we deal with people that want to come into this country in the right way, and in a way that obviously respects their individual rights. So I think we've lost our way when it comes to immigration. And you know what? Listen, whatever Trump thinks, this country isn't going to change. I mean, it isn't just going into California, going to the Midwest, going to the Northeast. These are diverse communities. They're made up of immigrants from across the world. That's our strength. That's not going to go away. And somehow we've got to get back to the human side of immigration in the sense of doing it right.
Agreed. Profoundly. Albert?
No, I just want to tell you, this is as interesting a conversation as we've had in a long time. I can't say it's uplifting because the message by definition is depressing, because what's happening is depressing. But I certainly think you've laid out some roadmaps and also talked about some really, really, really serious problems. And I said to begin with, there was no one more versed, better qualified, more knowledgeable to talk about the issues we discussed today than Leon Panetta. And I don't know, maybe your son would argue, Leon, but you are, and you've been a great guest, and we just can't thank you enough.
Yeah, a great friend, and we
Well,
appreciate
listen,
you.
our friendship goes back. Our friendship goes back a long way. As I said, we've seen Washington work. We've seen Washington when it doesn't work. And I think what we all have to do is remember that somehow we got to get back to the principles that represent governing our democracy, and try to inspire people to provide the right kind of leadership in this country. Look, I'm not going to give up on America. I want to make damn sure that we have a future.
Everybody hates alternative history. If Al Gore would have taken my recommendation in 2000, picked you to be vice president, we'd have won the election, and we wouldn't have any of this shit. And you would have been president from 08 to 16. But all right. So, but anyway, what's that?
You really have been terrific. Thank you very much. I'm just enormously grateful and appreciative for you doing this show, Leon.
Thanks, Al. James, good to be with you, and we'll see you down the road, pal.
Style yourself with Quince. When you look at the quality of that stuff and how well it's designed and put together, what it means, I'll just say this. I'm in Rome right now, in Italy, and the Italians, they wear good watches and they wear good clothes. I bet it's just part of their culture. But the amount of income that they spend on clothes and accessories has got to be some of the highest in the world. And you can get this stuff for I don't say next to nothing, but you can get really good stuff. And it's just really well done. And everybody in the world knows that the markup in textiles and clothes is 6 gazillion%. And these people have just cut it down to almost nothing. And clothing can be a really affordable and good part of your whole presentation.
Yeah, it sure can. So, really, if you head into that cool autumn, Quince is where you should be turning for fall essentials that actually get the job done. They're warm, they're durable, and they are built to last. It's true. Quince delivers every time with wardrobe staples that'll carry you through the season. We guarantee you want to keep wearing everything again and again. Imagine how good you're going to look and feel in classics like 100% Mongolian cashmere from just $60. You heard that right, $60. Classic fit denim and real leather and wool outerwear that looks sharp and holds up no matter what you get yourself into. Right now, cast your eyes on their suede trucker jacket. It's perfect for layering and gives you a look that's casual but makes a big impact with how well it looks put together. The dark chestnut one is truly a winner. Best of all, there's no elevated price tag, and everything we've seen from Quince has been top tier. But you might be wondering, how do they do it? I mean, really, how do they do it? Simple. They partner directly with ethical factories and top artisans while skipping the middleman. And they deliver premium quality at half the cost of similar brands. Now, the fits are perfect, the fabrics are incredible, and the style is unmatched. James can't wait to get into some activewear for the cold weather, but as good as James will look in his new gear, my Quince favorite is their luxurious stretch wool dress pant. They feel amazing, and they are perfect for getting things done on the hill or just reading in a recliner in style. So don't wait. Layer up this fall with pieces that feel as good as they look. Go to quince.com/war room for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada also. That's QUINCE.com/war room for free shipping and 365-day returns. Again, quince.com/war room. The link is in our show notes. James, the hottest political story, at least outside of Washington this week, is New Jersey, where Republicans are putting out a unauthorized leak that Mikey Sherrill didn't walk with her Naval Academy graduation class some 30 years ago because she didn't turn in some classmates who had cheated on an exam. Now, Cheryl graduated with that class. She was commissioned as an officer then. She served almost 10 years as a Navy helicopter pilot, received 2 commendations for heroism. And certainly, if she didn't turn in people, which she apparently did not, who were cheating, that was a violation of the honor code, and I think the punishment was just. But her record is exemplary. And Jack Ciccarelli, the Republican candidate, may want to stay away from this as someone who didn't serve, attacking someone who served honorably. They're also going after her the last couple of days because her 2 children were admitted to the Naval Academy. I would think that's something that people in New Jersey would be very proud of. But instead, they're screaming that somehow they got favoritism. That's not the way the academies work. So, James, I think, and this is a blip, I think that come November, Cheryl wins by high single digits. That's more than Phil Murphy won by last time, a lot more.
Well, first of all, what you say is undisputable and true. She has not been a great candidate. I mean, she's a great person. She has a great resume. But and remember, they had a pretty that she did very well in, but they had a pretty split Democratic primary. And I agree with you. I think she'll win. I think she'll win in higher single digits. But, they got to do a better job. And too many people have told me that her campaign so far doesn't get high marks. Now, the good news is they have time to adjust, okay? And I hope they do, and I think they will. But Ciccarelli, he's not governed by anything. He'll say anything. He'll start a fight, and it's going to take some cleverness to win like you should win. I think they will, but you got to run on more than your resume. And I've heard that critique from too many people not to take it seriously.
I remember John McCain telling me that he gave John Kerry advice when Kerry was running in 2004. And he said, John, let me tell you something. Man, no, nothing better than to be a hero. Nothing better than to have a great resume. You know what that does, John? That gets you in the door. But once you get inside that door, you have to have something to say. I think watching her as a member of Congress, I don't disagree with your analysis of her campaign, but watching her as a member of Congress, I think in these final 5 weeks, she will have something to say, and I think she's going to win.
I agree with you, but for the record, she's not there yet. She'll probably win if she doesn't get there, but she can do a lot better, and her campaign can get a lot better.
Yeah. New York City. Eric Adams, the mayor, dropped out. Eric Adams 4 years ago came in with promise. He beat some left-wing candidates then. He was a black former police officer. He talked about reform. He's leaving disgraced. He was not a good mayor. He got out of an indictment because of a sleazy deal that he cut with Donald Trump. He was only getting 7% in the polls. And I'm sorry, establishment, this ain't going to matter. Andrew Cuomo is not going to win the New York mayoralty race. The guy you don't like is going to win it. And that's just the reality.
Well, okay, I will give us some credit. I remember this distinctly when that mayor's race 4 years ago was going on. We talked, as we often do. And we both were of opinions, I would vote for Eric Adams, but this is not going to end well. All right?
Yeah.
We're two for two on that, okay?
Right.
The problem is, till this day, and I'm one of these people that thinks that Andrew was a better governor than people even give him credit for, but that's not the issue here. He hasn't given anybody a reason to vote for him after all of this. I don't see him breaking through on anything other than I'm qualified, and we know that was... Who was ever a more qualified presidential candidate than George H.W. Bush in 92? I don't know. Maybe there's never. I mean, for qualifications don't win elections. And Mamdani and give him credit. He is seized and repeats the issue today, is cost of living. And he's got a fresh new look to it. I agree he's going to win. And he might turn out to be a pretty good mayor. We were right about Eric Adams. Maybe I hope we're right about Mamdani.
Yeah, he also is, one thing he is, which Andrew Cuomo's not, he's an upbeat guy. I mean, I may think some of the stuff he's saying, I do, as a matter of fact, is naive. He's not going to be able to get it done. But he conveys a optimism, a can-do optimism. Andrew Cuomo conveys a darkness. And I think it would have been uphill under any circumstance. But my guess is that 7% of the vote that Eric Adams got, number of them will stay home. Some of them will vote for Andrew. Some of them will vote for Mamdani. It won't make any difference at all. And I'm sure the Republicans will try to pressure Trump will try to pressure the Republican candidate out who's getting 15%. That's not going to matter either.
Yeah, again, from what I can see, and I read about it, fairly diligently, he's the only guy that's given a reason to vote for him.
Yeah.
I mean, and so it's hard for me to see how he loses. And, I think people in New York feel like, the guy's got some energy, he's got some youth around him. Maybe, who knows? He had some bad ideas before. Maybe he'll have some good ideas going forward. We can hope.
Yeah.
He seems like a skilled guy. I hope he turns out to be a good mayor. New York's most important city in the world. I love going there. My daughter lives there. I want him to have a good mayor.
Yeah, I do too. And I just final word about Adams. We ought to remember that Adams, I mentioned in passing that sleazy deal. Adams was under indictment, and what happened? The now clearly corrupt Trump Justice Department came and they said, we're going to drop it if you agree to do X, Y, and Z and support us on immigration and a whole lot of other issues. The U.S. attorney up there, who was a Federalist Society member, a woman who is a bona fide conservative, said, I'm not going to do that kind of a deal. That's corrupt. And of course, what was his name? Emil Bove, who's now on the New Jersey Court of the U.S. Court of Appeals, fired her, and he cut the deal. So it was really, really sleazy. And Eric Adams is going out as a really discredited, sad figure.
Well,
James,
he's not going out in handcuffs, so he's ahead of the game where he should be.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, anyway, we'll see what happens to him. Virginia, not much. I think the only impact in Virginia, which is the other race that's going to be held in November, is that Northern Virginia will be very much affected by this government shutdown. And my guess is, this is just a guess because it kind of plays into the larger picture. I think if anything, it's going to help Spanberger, who's already headed to a double-digit win, because when it comes to the question of do you want, some kind of a active government, certainly people are going to identify more with her than with her opponent. May not have much impact at all, but it's not going to slow Spanberger. Let me put it that way.
Right. So Sears, the candidates of Abigail Spanberger and Winston Earl Sears, are Republican. They're going all in on trans. Now, you say they're doing that because they're demagogues or that there's only 0.6% of the people are trans. Why should we attack these people, et cetera, et cetera. The reason they're doing that because they have nothing else.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
If you're sitting around trying to come up, well, you're part of the incumbent administration in Richmond. You're part of the incumbent administration in Washington. You got all kind of different people on your ticket. You have nothing. The only thing we can talk about are trans people. It's not that, of course, they're willing to use anybody or anything to win an election, but they don't have anything else. That's their default position. And she doesn't have, Youngkin barely does or says anything. She doesn't defend him. She can't say anything about Trump. She's getting slaughtered by the way, we know that Fairfax and Loudon are going to really come in strong, Democrats, and the layoff is even more. Don't forget the Tidewater, that Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Newport News.
That big house race down there next year, too, so a lot of energy.
And remember, the Democrats carried Escambia County, Florida, the first time in, 60 years, which, along with Hampton Roads, the two biggest Navy populations in the country. Watch that number coming out of Hampton Roads. The Democrats are going to do very well.
Will do. I think the only race there that really is in any doubt is the race for Attorney General, which is really, really important. But again, I think that if Spanberger wins by double digits, they're going to win a term.
All right. I say that sometimes. If we think she's going to win by double digits, at what number could and the number's not, is at most 3. I don't even think it's that. But it's hard to rationalize that she's going to win big, but we could lose the AG's race. I can't see that happening. I really can't.
Well, it's happened before, but it's not very likely to happen. And I think that the AG candidate's apparently a pretty good candidate, running against an incumbent. But that's where all the Republican efforts are now, because that's where they have to pour a whole lot of money into it. Right.
They got to have a talking point. In politics, it's impossible to say nothing. So you said, well, you're down by X in the latest Roanoke College, and Christopher Newport College or whatever, Times Dispatch poll, and you go, aha! But the Attorney General, you watch that, because it's all they got left to say. There's nothing else to say. We got a great Attorney General's candidate. You ain't going to overcome that kind of lead.
That's for sure.
He would be the greatest candidate that ever lived. Spanberger wins by 13 and he wins the AG.
Well, I would just add the one thing we don't want to forget, there also is a critically important ballot initiative in the state of California, because the Republicans are cheating everywhere to try to fix it. They got Missouri this week. They got a couple more they're going to get. It's absolutely essential to win that ballot initiative in California, which I think they will.
I think a great Democratic talking point, and I think the public would get this. It's not inside. They're doing everything they can not to swear in this woman from Tucson. All right? And they go, well, the House is not insane because she's to vote to subpoena the Epstein stuff. They're literally slow walking a person that won an election, I think about 50 fucking points. Right? Well, we haven't got the paperwork yet. I get the official certification. And they're doing it right in front of you, and they're pointing out that some the Republican won a race in Florida earlier this year, and it put the person in 36 hours. I mean, think about that.
Yeah,
They're still walking an election. And I mean, there's no dispute over who won. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Oh, check them from Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know.
Okay, we got a lot more to discuss in these next 6 weeks. Hey, now for the outrage of the week. James, as you so well know, one of the great shams in American history was the Lost Cause, which for almost a century perpetrated the lie that the Civil War was not about slavery, which of course it was, and the South and its General Robert E. Lee were noble, while the Yankee General Ulysses S. Grant was a disgraceful drunk. Grant actually was a brilliant general, and Lee was a traitor to his country. Donald Trump and a brand of his contemporary bandits are replaying this now about January the 6th, the violent insurrection on the Capitol. The lie they are spinning is that these were just honest Trump protesters up there to talk about an election. And the violence was fueled by, there was violence. We all saw it. You know what it was fueled by, according to them, James? FBI agents and other undercover operatives. We saw the horror with our own eyes. Their hero, the late Ashley Babbitt, was shot because she illegally tried to force her way into the House chamber amid all the violence. We know what happened. These Trump people think they can fool you because you are fools. You are not. This is not going to work.
So, I'm here in Italy and Rome, and I go back historically. You remember they tried Galileo because he said the earth moved around the sun, and they convicted him. And upon conviction, his statement was, yet it still moves. Okay? Which got to be the greatest quote in history. Okay. It doesn't matter. I'm reading this story from, it was actually a Huffington Post, but it was about a woman named Baptiste, so I'm pretty sure has family history in New Orleans. But I'm going to read this to you. Schools across the country banned 6,870 books between July 2024 and June 2025, says the report from PEN, P-E-N, all uppercase America, a nonprofit organization that advocates for free expression. The 2023-2024 academic year saw a 200% increase in school book bans, bringing the total instances of book bans since 2021 to nearly 23,000. Never before in the life of any living American have we had so many books systematically removed from school libraries across the country. Casey Meehan, the director of PEN America's Freedom to Read program. This is what we're doing. We're like banning books. We're like advocating for goddamn stupidity. And boy, if you want the lost cause to take hold again, ban the books. They're literally burning books in the United States today. And Florida is at the epicenter of book burning. And we ought to resolve that anytime that we have a chance, we should call them book burners, because that's what they are, book burners.
Well, James, I have a question because I've been told by all those conservative pundits and the Trump people that it's the left that's the greatest danger to free speech. So are all these books being banned by left-wingers?
No, I doubt if any of them, out of the 23,000, whatever it is, I doubt if there's 5. All right. I mean, it's all so absurd. But, if we get by, we could get it back if we, get a good president next time, and people hang in, maybe we can gut through this. But you can't gut through an illiterate population. And that's what they want. That's at the core of their fundamental belief. If you teach people to read, then you teach people to think. And if they think, they're going to find out how much we fucking over them. So if we just stop them from reading and stopping and thinking, we can continue to steal all we want. And that's what Tom Holman, who took $50,000 in a paper bag, where's the money? Somebody, can we show me the money? You don't want people reading about that, now do you?
It's unbelievable.
You think about it, but going after books in this year, books, banning books. I can't imagine. And then they will. So if you read, please allow them to select what you read. I just got it. But today I was going through and I saw. I said, "Oh shit!"
Yeah.
I mean, God Almighty. In that Pen America, I know them. They're a legit organization.
Oh, they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and very honest and very, But it is, it has become commonplace for these right wingers to claim that the greatest threat to free speech is coming from the left.
Yeah.
I saw Dave Urban on television spinning that bullshit the other night. It is so untrue. I mean, yes, there have been some from the left, some of the crazies, but man, it's 90% from the right. Book banning.
Name a prominent Democrat, okay, that wants to ban books. All right. When I do that, I said, just give me a name. Well, I saw this on site. Okay, you saw it online. Who? I haven't heard of AOC wanting to ban books. I hadn't heard of Billy and Omar wanting to ban books. Frankly, I haven't heard of it. Maybe there is, but I don't know of any book banning that's being advocated here.
That's a question they do not like, James. That's a question, really. It makes them very uncomfortable.
Give me a name.
Right.
Right. Want to keep on the police. Name one. A single one. Right now.
Can't do it. Okay, now we're going to our listener questions. This is one of my favorite segments, and James's too. They are so good. And the first, I'm going to combine two questions for the first to James, because one, our friend Steve is cheating a little bit. Steve says Steve is from the declining USA. Steve, we're going to let you get by this week, but next week, tell us where you're from. And he's combined with Rob in Rosemont, Pennsylvania, which is the area I grew up in. Steve asked, from your perspective, James, what are the most effective divisions or types of organization within the Democratic Party structure for someone like me to support if my goal is to make the greatest impact? And sort of as a corollary, Rob says, could a strategy of focusing on the economy and governing for all Americans be the most effective strategy in 2026?
Okay, so let's back up to the first question. What's the most effective? Get involved in the campaigns. Donate to the campaign. This big house race in Bucks County that's not very far from Rosemont. You can drive it in.
Well, no, Steve is from declining. We don't know where declining USA is.
I don't know where Steve is from.
But I'll tell you something. There's some race near declining USA, wherever the hell it is.
My advice is the most important thing that we can do is win the election, because that's 90% of the game. And I would be more into getting involved in campaigns, or if it's a question, it's not always true. If the state party is competent and good, you might want to get involved with that. But the biggest thing, if you win the election, all good things will happen everywhere. If you lose, as we learned out, bad things happen everywhere.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Win the fucking election.
Don in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina says, I am worried that my grandchildren's grandchildren will not see the repairs of the norms Trump has destroyed. Is this an irrational fear? Please talk me off the ledge.
Well,
Don, I can back you up a little bit, but I can't talk you off it. There's some things that will take generations. I mean, the scientists, for instance, that we are losing by these crazy cuts to NIH and American universities, it's going to take an awful long time to recover from that. The contempt for the rule of law that they have shown is something that you just don't turn around overnight, particularly with public opinion. And I think some of the economic damage is going to be real. So, Don, don't give up. Your grandchildren can help correct some of the things that have occurred, and their grandchildren even more so. But the damage is not going to be short.
Well, I'm a little older. I have a grandchild who's 2 years, almost 7 months to the day. I'm not worried about his grandchildren. I'm worried about him. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not even worried about his children. I'm just worried about him because I think the damage that's being done across the country is the repair work that's going to have to be done here is going to require some extraordinary people and extraordinary effort. So I appreciate your question, but you just worry about your own if your grandchild gets through it, you might get through it, but that's not a given they will.
No, it's going to be very tough. Steve in Burbank, California, James asks, does Trump really have a chance in hell of winning the Nobel Peace Prize? I'd love to see him denied.
Okay, I'll take that, but I don't know what I know about the Nobel Prize. I had a friend won it one time, but no. I mean, short answer is no. They're not going to give Trump the Nobel Prize in no way, shape, or form.
I mean, even though he
stopped 7
solved
wars.
he what?
He stopped 7 wars.
We may be up to 8 now. I don't know, and we're going to double digits by October when they decide. I mean, he'll stop wars that we didn't even know existed.
Yeah. I mean, it's anybody that's not panicked about the situation we're in is a fool.
Yeah. This is a very tough question, which I'll take, and then you can join. Tori in Boston, Massachusetts. Tori is a liberal and has not figured out how to have a conversation with Trump supporters who get all their information from right-wing media outlets. How do you recommend those of us who would like to see more unity have a conversation with? I've tried several times, and it is very, very difficult. It's not like it was, 10, 20, 30 years ago when you might have a discussion, an argument about tax cuts or Vietnam or healthcare. I mean, I did a show with Robert Novak, the Prince of Darkness, for 17 years. And we had, sometimes it got a little bit shrill, but usually, we had really serious debates and conversations about some of this. It's much harder today because the assumption is there's a conspiracy. The assumption is you're part of this conspiracy. The assumption is that basically all these people are evil. And then you get things like, I'm sorry, January 6th was a FBI insurrection. When I do have the couple conversations I have, I try to start sort of with a generic. How do you feel about, should we have a government and what is its basic purpose? Or do you, we know you believe in truth. How important is that? And how do we try to find some common ground on that? But I haven't gotten very far, Tori. I'm sorry. I hope you come up with some better ideas. Maybe James will have some.
There is no better. If you're right now, October the 1st, 2025, you've watched Trump be president for 4 years. You watch him run. You watch him now be president for 6.5 months or whatever it is, 7 months, and you still for him. It's hopeless. So look, I hope you're well. I hope you lead a long life. There's nothing for me to say for you. How in the world could I convince you if you've watched all the thievery, all the criminality, all the institutional destruction, the just documented, 35, 40,000 lies, one after another. And if that's what you want, I can't do anything for you. I'm just not going to waste time on you. Go find a young, impressionable person, or find somebody and try to get them, or find somebody who already thinks and get them out to vote. But I got to tell you, it's a total waste of time. These fucking people, I'm not telling you they're stupid. They choose to be really stupid. And I think most of them just make the choice.
I fear you're right. Jay in Dallas, Texas. By the way, we had dinner last night with this wonderful woman from Dallas, Texas, very involved in the arts and everything. Dallas is a happening place. Dallas is good things are happening down there. Jay asked, how are we going to make sure the elections take place, I assume we're talking about 2026, and are fair, James?
So I think this is going to happen, and I think people feel this. And they're going to try something. Okay, that they're going to try something. The first attempt, there has to be a massive pushback. All right, and if it's just one little thing here and there, and I think people are kind of primed for this, and I think people that have some influence in public opinion or what people hear got to say, look, they're going to try this, and anyone will tell you, any general, any political strategist, any business person will say to you, the first skirmish is always the most important one.
Yep.
And no matter what it is, there has to be a vehement, and when I mean vehement reaction to it. And I think there's some chance that there will be. But we got to warn, we have a duty to warn. And watch out, because if you let it get in, it's hard to undo it. You got to have a vehement and not just robust, I mean, beyond robust reaction.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I just hope I hope these groups get even more organized, and I hope some of these people who have resources dip a little bit more in their pocket to help these groups get organized, because they haven't done enough so far.
No.
Victoria in Davis, California says, "What are your thoughts on California's Prop 50? I am a strong proponent," this is Victoria, Prop 50 to counter Trump's egregious and possibly illegal and unconstitutional co-opting of gerrymandering, but understand why so many good people are hesitant. Victoria, the only reason that they're hesitant is because the idea of blatant gerrymandering is a bad idea, but there is a worse idea, and that's called unilateral disarmament. If you want to sit back and you want to let them cheat, as they are doing in Texas, as they're doing in Missouri, as they're planning in Ohio, as they're planning in Florida, if you want to sit back and say, fine, we'll let them cheat, and maybe they'll then take the House illicitly. You know what? I would much rather go and say, I'm sorry, we have to play that game too. We have to do it because, it's self-defense, but it's for the country. And the, Mr. Munger and Mr. Schwarzenegger just don't seem to get that. So I am all for Prop 50.
Me too. I mean, I agree with you said. Just one thing about Davis, the University of California at Davis is one great university.
Yeah.
They are the foremost place in the world. If I'm talking about France, Italy, anywhere else, in, I guess you'd call it oenology, the academic study of wine. I mean, they are very ahead of everything. That's a great university at Davis. I've been there. They have a very nice. It's a very nice place. It's a very nice place to live.
Okay, Victoria, we love your town and we love Prop 50. So go round up some of your citizens to vote for it. James, our final question, I like this, is from George in Lake Wales, Florida. You know where Lake Wales, Florida is?
No, but there's a million lakes in Florida.
Yeah.
It's in Central Florida, but that's just
yeah.
That's an educated or not educated guess, just a guess.
Well, our crack research staff will probably have that answer, before the show's out or by next week. Anyway, George asks, why has no nickname stuck on Trump? He slanders everyone else, but nothing in on him.
That's a good question.
It is.
And, by the way, I think that the best nickname I've heard is that guy Cal Raleigh at the hit, 60 home runs for Seattle, the Big Dump.
Oh, God.
That's a great
nickname. I just looked at stats briefly. I hadn't looked at them in about a week or so, and suddenly I saw 60. And this is amazing. And since we're talking, this is Wednesday, but the Red Sox beating the Yankees in that opening, I thought of, two of my very dearest friends of all time, Dick Flavin and Mark Shields, are dancing in heaven, and Roger Altman is dancing down here. Go Sox.
Yeah. This is just a question I get in baseball, but I've thought about this in this. Has there ever been a National League and an American League player simultaneously that have done what Ohtani and Judge have done? Now you could have Ruth and Garrett, but they played on the same team,
Right.
Before where you had the and by the way, Jason Stark, who we got to get this guy on a show sometime, said Judge ought to be it, not Cal Raleigh, and he makes a very compelling case. But
well, I'm thinking about that. Maybe Henry Aaron and Mickey Mantle. I mean, but it's a great question.
Stan Musial and Ted Williams, I'd have to look at somebody years that but at the 2005 that Ohtani and Judge had, I'd like to look it up at just like OPS and home runs or something like that. I don't know. Mantle, Aaron.
But let's get Jason Stark on and we'll ask him. James, last night I was going through some files and I ran across some things. My friend Dick Flavin used to write about the Red Sox a lot. A wonderful, wonderful Ted. He was very close to Ted Williams. 1960, the Red Sox, and I think it was the Indians, were doing their spring training in Phoenix, and they agreed, this is 60, they agreed to play an exhibition game in New Orleans, which was then segregated. And so there were two black players, I think, on each team. One of them was Mudcat Grant.
Oh, man.
And so they come in and they get off the plane and the luggage, the blacks are going to stay at a black hotel and the rest are stay at a regular hotel. By mistake, all the luggage from the black players is sent to the white hotel. So they sent Mudcat over to get it. And Mudcat gets to the front door and the doorman says, "We ain't going to let any in person in this hotel." He said, "I'm just coming to get my... But you ain't getting in this hotel. Get the hell out of here." At that point, Ted Williams is walking around the block, which he would do every night on the road. And he says, "Mudcat, how are you?" And Mudcat says, "Well, I'm fine, Ted, except our luggage, the black players, was sent here by mistake, and this guy won't let me get it." At which point, Williams gets this guy and says, "Not only are you going to get their goddamn luggage, you're going to get it quick. I expect you back here within 60 seconds. You understand, mister?" That guy, as the story goes, you've never seen anybody move so fast. And Mudcat and the players got back their luggage.
About that time, it might have been 1960, Mississippi State made the NCAA tournament, and the Mississippi legislature passed a law that they couldn't leave the state.
Yeah.
Darkness. They left the state. I think Bailey Howell was their star basketball player.
Right.
I mean, it's been a long time ago. But they actually had to leave the state. They had to go out and cover darkness to go play a basketball game. And, that happened in our lifetime. I mean, easy to remember that.
Ted Williams was very conservative, except on race. He was a real liberal on race. He welcomed Jackie Robinson. He lobbied the Red Sox. They were very late in integrating. And there were only two things. He only had two soft spots for non-conservatives, and that were race and John Glenn, who he flew with in the war. And other than that, he was an unbridled right-winger. But God, he was one hell of a hitter.
You know what? If you're the greatest hitter ever and you have a tolerant attitude to other people, I don't fuck all your politics.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons, I think, he may have been as liberal as he was in race, that he didn't tell a lot of people about this, but he was part Hispanic. And
right. That's right. Ben Bradley's part did a 800-page book on something.
I really like Ben Bradley Jr., but man, it's hard. And I'm a big Ted Williams fan, but it's hard to get through 800 pages.
There's a lot of people, our friend Ron Turner, some of these people, when they start writing, they just can't stop.
Yeah.
And I'd rather read a book about a guy that knew too much and not enough. And
that's true. And you always can skim. Listen, these letters were great. If we didn't get to yours this week, I promise we'll try to get to it next week. But Steve, from Declining USA, that won't cut it anymore. You got to tell us where you're from. So thank you a lot. We love those letters.
I'm and I come back. I don't know if you remember this, but 20, 30 years ago, the big thing with the Saints, it was so bad. People would wear a paper bag over their heads.
Oh, yeah.
So the paper bag thing, I think when I should do a paper bag for Americans traveling abroad, because I can't tell you the number of people that come over to me in Europe and say, "Oh, James, God, I'm so embarrassed to be." I mean, people really feel embarrassed. I mean, it's a very common reaction you get abroad.
No, we saw the same thing in London. We saw it in Paris. It was just, I mean, it really was.
You can't escape it. And people, I mean, it's really frightening. And it's just getting worse. It's going to get worse.
I'll tell you, going back to baseball, I was so happy the Mets did not make the playoffs, even though I love Juan Soto. But that owner is, a bad guy. They spent a fortune and they got cut out. I mean, it has to make you feel good.
Terry Francona said it's two things. Terry Francona has got to be, as soon as he's eligible, in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he won the first World Series with the Red Sox.
Yeah.
He managed Cleveland punched way above it away. By the way, they have one of the most interesting stories in baseball, what they did this year. And then he's got Cincinnati, who's horrifically cheap and bad in the goddamn playoffs. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
He is great. And I'll tell you who else is a great manager is the Reds. This is from Roger Altman, but he's so right. That Red Sox manager is a genius. He really was.
He now Cora now?
Cora, yeah, he got caught in the Houston scandal.
You ought to see something funny. Watch the Warren Morris home run, and Alex Cora was the shortstop for the University of Miami.
Yeah.
Just weeping on the ground, beating his hand. The guy's a competitor. I'll say that. And
he's a smart. I mean, the Sox aren't loaded this year. I mean, they got a pretty good pitching staff and got a great closer, but they really aren't loaded. And
beating garbage cans in Houston. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you check out the link to our sponsor, Quince, in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them because when you do, you help make this podcast happen. To keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go and take a look. Now, you also can find other shows you might enjoy on the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. And remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another program as we continue our War Room planning.